Welcome, everybody, to the AAUW January branch meeting featuring Mayor Julie Akins. Our moderator today is Regina Ayers. The meeting is sponsored by our Public Policy Committee. Regina is the co-chair of that committee. And our committee's worked really hard to develop comprehensive questions for the mayor. We've also gotten some questions from the public, so we're going to be dealing with those questions over the next hour. We've had an awful lot of people subscribe to this meeting, so if you know anybody who could not get in, please send them to our website. The website will be in our chat. If you find you need to ask a question, send that also to the chat. My co-host, Catherine, will be monitoring the chat all through the meeting. My name is Paula Weekend. I am co-president of AUW along with Catherine Lutz. And because we have so many guests here today, I just want to say a very brief thing about AUW in case you don't know who we are. So I know all the members know, but those of you that are guests, AUW is a nationwide organization. It began in 1881, and our mission is to advance gender equity for women and girls through research, education, and advocacy. This meeting fits right in with that mission because one of our focuses is always women in leadership. And what do we have here but a woman mayor newly elected? So it's a perfect fit for our mission statement. I'm going to ask our our speakers that are coming up, Regina and Julie, to please unmute themselves because you will need to be speaking. And Regina, I'm going to pass it on to you to introduce our speaker today.
Thank you, Paula. And thank you very much, Julie, for joining us today. I know you had a challenging campaign, and here you are, Mayor of Ashland. I'd just like to let everybody know that the questions that I will be asking today were drafted by the public policy team and our co-presidents. And there will be, as Paula said, if we have time, we will ask questions that may come in through the chat. So welcome, Julie.
Thank you. It's good to be here. I took off my glasses, so I'm blind as a bat at the moment. But prior, I was looking at the squares and I thought, wow, these are the people who changed the world right here. You know, all of us ladies who have had our share of fights, we know how to stay in the ring and get things done. I'm happy to be here.
Good. We're looking forward to your presentation here, or your addressing the questions. I've already noticed that the lights are on in the mayor's office. So while you are burning the midnight oil up there, even though the council meetings are via Zoom.
Hey, actually, that's not my office anymore.
Oh, no. Okay, where is your office?
City Manager Pro Tem Adam Hanks took that office after John Stromberg left. I'm pretty sad. It's a pretty great office, but they moved the mayor's office downstairs to the front room there, just off the utility billing area.
Okay, well now I'll know. Oh, so Adam has been burning the midnight oil.
Yes, I have too here in my little house.
I know you have. Well, we all know that the city has lots of challenges ahead. And as a leader, our citizens want to hear from you today. We have quite a few people from the public. And so as we've mentioned, people really want to hear what you have to say. We're oversubscribed. So let's get started. We've got lots of questions, and I have it divided up by categories of questions. And the first question is going to be on the economy. And how can the city administration help our small businesses survive the impacts of 2020, which we all know is COVID and the fire, loss of our tourists? So could you address that?
I would be happy to. We've done some things. We created a grant and handed out some $97,000 to 36 separate small businesses here in town. But just like you, I see these businesses closing. We just lost the cinema. I noticed Good Earth is for rent. We have these small businesses all over town who are closing down. I'm really close with a lot of the owners of restaurants and on the plaza. I'm kind of a foodie, and I know they're all really struggling. And I think we need to figure out how to get some more grant money and help these folks out. I do favor that. I favor taking a sharp pencil to all of our grant mechanisms and finding ways to do it. And I'm working with city administration on a regular basis. I don't mean that to be a slippery answer, but the truth is we have not identified a funding source to help these businesses yet. I tried during my time as a counselor and didn't quite have sway to get that done. So I'm on the job again as mayor and seeking opportunities to distribute that money, because I'm with you. Those small businesses are what make Ashland Ashland. If we lose them, I fear, the possibility of, chain restaurants or stores coming in, and we don't want that. So I agree with you that that's a priority and we need to get on it.
So what were you trying to do as a city councilor that,
The same thing, trying to identify grants and pass them directly to small businesses. I think, I haven't always found agreement around doing that. And a lot of the job of mayor and councilor is figuring out how to get your colleagues, get everybody on the same page and see what we can do. I think as this thing grinds on and on, we definitely need to do more. I am hopeful that President Biden, I'm sorry, it just feels so nice in my mouth. Anyway, I'm hopeful that President Biden will get his latest round of assistance passed, and there'll be some money downstream for the city of Ashland, and that we'll grab that and help businesses because they need it.
okay. On to climate. What policy changes would you like to see implemented to better combat climate change here in Ashland?
Difficult question, actually, because we all know that climate change is not really a local problem. It's a global problem, and we can do some things to affect that. We passed the SEEP as a resolution as opposed to an ordinance. It might be good to re-examine that as a potential ordinance. We passed.
SEEP stands for those that may not know.
Sorry, gosh, I've fallen into the acronym cavern. Climate Energy Action Plan. We didn't also achieve 10 by 20, which we hope to do, 10% of our energy focus locally. We didn't get that done. So what can we do? There are lots of dialogues around this, and some of them are interesting and rather humble. Soil regeneration, I have learned, is a key component to combating climate change. So what can we do to help people literally regenerate their soil? How can we work together to convince folks that giant grassy lawns with non-native grasses are not really good because they soak up a ton of water, and water is a big element of climate change? How do we convince the university to consider not running these huge amounts of sprinklers all over these fields that are not presently in use? How can we encourage rooftop solar? We have local solar companies that I'd like to help and enable to do more of that work. It's a delicate balance because you don't want to leave behind marginalized populations, right? So if you put a lot of restrictions on new building, which many favor, and certainly I agree that climate change is the greatest existential threat the world faces. I don't know that we want to demand all of these changes, which may leave people who are on the lower end of the economic spectrum, may make it hard for them to rent or buy homes. But I do think we can do things like passive solar. I do think we can put in some requirements around having native plants in yards, having pollinator gardens. These are beautiful things that actually make a difference to climate change. I think mass transit's a big deal. I think taking buses and getting people out of cars is actually a really beneficial and helpful thing. I think taking care of our forests is part of the climate change picture, certainly as it pertains to wildfire. We're actually a dry desert here, or a dry savanna, excuse me. And what's native here are beautiful oak trees, and they are fire resistant. I learned this when I worked at Lomakatsi Restoration Project. The indigenous people in this area took care of thinning the forest and working with natural burn cycles. We need to do that again. We've started that with Ashland Forest Resiliency, and we need to keep that work going. Those are just some things off the top of my head.
Okay, let's move on to staffing. We've got some key positions that need to be filled, and they've been vacant for a little bit. So we voted in a city manager. I guess, can you explain, for those in the audience that may not know, what is the difference between a city administrator organization and a city manager organization?
A city administrator organization, which is what we had before, creates a position in the mayor where the mayor is the CEO, as it were, of Ashland. The strong city manager form changes that so that the city manager is the professional CEO of the city of Ashland. That said, the city manager still serves at the will of the council and mayor. So your elected representatives, the way this is supposed to work, direct the city manager as to their priorities and what they want to see done. And those elected officials do that at your will based on what you want to have done. So it is a democratized form. I voted in favor of it. I do think that when you have a mayor who's the CEO and running things, there is a possibility that that mayor may tend to run things sort of in an autocratic way, where if you have a city manager, if it works according to the idea that it's supposed to, that city manager accounts to the entire council and the council directs. So there's a possibility that that could be more democratic. That's the thinking.
Okay. So how are you and the council going to ensure that the candidates for the new city manager position are diversified in gender, race, ethnicity, and how can you expedite this process? My understanding is that it's right now it's a January till June effort. That's quite a while. Can we expedite that? And what's the process right now for finding these candidates?
Well, I'm with you. I'd like to expedite it as well. The process right now, council in the last meeting voted to go with option one, which was a recruitment firm. I do also hope that we will consider RVCOG, who does a great job. RVCOG stands for Rogue Valley Council of Governments, who does a great job in assisting and actually help the City of Talent identify city manager candidates and their interim city manager, who's Jamie McLeod Skinner. Boy, am I jealous about that. What a great catch that was. Mm-hmm. So hopefully we'll use that as well. And the process right now is that council has gone through the sort of the timelines. We've decided, council as a whole decided to go with a recruiting firm. We've given really strict direction in terms of looking at everything through an equity lens. One of the ways you do that are simple things like we redact the name from the qualifications initially and just look at the resume in terms of its qualifications. I think this council is also deeply concerned about making sure that we have an equitable process. And I think we all agree it would be really great to have a city manager who doesn't fit the template of, the white, cis, straight, patriarchal guy. I think we're looking for someone who can bring some difference in perspective. I can tell you that I reached out to Corey Falls, who used to be our police chief and is now the assistant city manager in Gresham, because I'd heard he wasn't super thrilled up there. And he's a black-bodied man and a friend. And I reached out and said, hey, would you like to come home? And he said, no, darn it. But I asked him to please help us in this process. And if he hears of anybody or if he can direct us to any professional organizations, we sure would like to talk to folks, because I agree. I think we need to have, we need to have a wide open process that allows us to look at things in a different way going forward.
Well, how do you think you can expedite this? Is there any way, working with Tina Gray, who's the Director of HR, Human Resources, she's basically managing this effort right now.
She is. She's managing this effort right now along with council. We've been deeply invested in the process and are asking for updates whenever we meet. I think, how can we expedite it? I don't know the answer to that, if I'm honest. We hired this recruitment firm. There were several who came forward with RFPs. We're in the process of hiring that recruitment firm. And we just need to stay on them and get it done as soon as we can. But it also has to be done well, because this is a decision that will affect the future of Ashland and all of us. So speed and doing it right both matter. So I think we're expediting to the degree that we can. I think this council is a very hardworking council, to be honest. These are not people who are sort of doing this as a hobby gig. Every counselor that I can think of is a working counselor. So I think we're all invested in getting it done quickly and correctly.
Good. Well, how is the public going to be involved in this selection process, if all? Will they have the opportunity perhaps to meet the final candidates?
That's my goal. We talked about that as well, and I wanted the same thing, because really this person works for you, right? So my request is that the 3 finalists come to an open council meeting and are asked questions, and the public can see them and hear their answers. We also have planned, Tina Gray suggested this and I really liked it, a mixer for the community via Zoom or in person, depending on where we're at that time with the pandemic, so that people could come and also meet the candidates and ask some questions as well.
Good. Okay, we've got another key position, which is the fire chief. And where are we at in filling that position?
Well, that whole thing kind of blew up with that intergovernmental agreement with Fire District 3, and it blew up for a variety of reasons, but it's sort of the standard thing that makes things fall apart. A lack of proper communication, in my view, is what made that not happen. And I think that's okay, because it wasn't really a vetted process with an equity lens, and we need that in all our hiring. So where we're at now is we've contracted with the Western fire chiefs, and we are looking at an interim position for 6 months, and that person will help us identify fire chief going forward, and that's the direction we've decided to go, and I think it's a good and sensible direction.
So you mentioned interim. So why not just wait and hire a full-time person rather than putting a person in there for a short period of time?
It's a good question. I asked the same question because we need someone now to help us get ready for fire season, because we need someone who can also help us recruit for a fire chief, and that person is interim, so that's part of their gig. We have a person right now in Ralph Sartain who is holding down 3 jobs in the fire department, and I think it's unfair to keep that going any longer than it has to.
Okay. Well, let's move on to the fire season, fire evacuation, which relates to the fire chief. What will be your recommendations for updating, upgrading, changing the evacuation plan that was used during the Alameda fire?
It was really a mess, wasn't it? I mean, we had traffic diverted off of the interstate. We had our roads clogged with big rigs. People couldn't get out. They were terrified. There wasn't, Nixle sort of fell apart. I think any sort of a subscriber service that goes to your cell phone is not going to be good enough in case of a disaster. So if you're mad about it, welcome to the crew. I'm mad too. I didn't think it was very good. I don't think it was very well done. We are going to have a community forum in February. We're still trying to set those dates. I think the last date I saw was the 16th or 17th in the evening for the public to come and hear what's been put forth so far and to add your input. I'm a person who favors the grid system of evacuation. They used it in Santa Rosa, California. After their fires, they realized that their system wasn't good enough either. And it's literally like a colored grid system. If you live in this neighborhood, this blue neighborhood, this is your route out in case of fire. Of course, depending on where that fire is coming from and the wind direction, but it gives people a general idea of how they can get out of town. And that's posted and known to everybody so that we cannot have all the cars going on the same road at the same time. Another thing I'd like to see is, frankly, I'd like to see buses coming through town and picking people up and getting them out of town. Because if you have every person in their car trying to leave at the same time, you can see what that creates. There are also people with disabilities and people who don't have cars and people who don't drive, and we don't just leave them here at their own devices. So, and senior citizens who, may have some mobility issues, we need buses to go around and pick people up and get them out of here. That's something that I would recommend. I've also talked about the siren. I haven't gotten a lot of praise on this one, but maybe you guys can back me up if you like the idea. I know that we have the Hosler Dam siren and people are concerned if we use that siren and we also use it for fire, it'll be confusing. I don't really think so. If you know there's a fire and you hear a siren, you know it's a fire, right? I mean, there's smoke. There are tales of fire. So I'd like to use a siren system as opposed to just Nixle. Nixle also is part of the same warning system that the county has, but it's a different, it's slightly different and they don't talk to each other. So that's problematic. So we need to all be on the same page in terms of a warning system if we want to keep Nixle. And we probably do as complementary, just something more basic like a siren. We also, the police chief is in charge of this evacuation planning and has been working with CERT and has been working with the consulting agency that put out the survey that many of you filled out. And I'm anxious to hear what he's going to say as well. But those are some of my ideas.
Well, some people have suggested that we better utilize the CERT program. Do you know what that stands for? I guess I don't know what it stands for. Certified
Emergency Response Team.
Okay, so those are the people in your neighborhood that help with various emergencies. And I don't know that they were leveraged during this fire. Is that sound like something that could be done?
It does. I think they were leveraged, but maybe not to the degree that they're capable of. The something that concerns me personally, and as your mayor, is that Terry, who was running the CERT program, was cut way back to like a part-time position, and that seems kind of wild to me. I don't know. I don't know what we need to do to get her back to a full-time status, but that's clearly a full-time job to me. And I do think that the highly trained volunteers at CERT need to be respected, honored, and be part of this process for sure. I would agree.
Who's responsible for coordinating with Jackson County here in Ashland?
The city manager pro tem is
Okay.
responsible. Yeah.
So that would be right now Adam Hanks and then the new manager.
That's
That
correct.
person. When does the fire season start? I guess it depends on the weather, but it can be as early as June.
I think it can, depending on weather and climatic conditions. Does anyone else just feel sad that that's a thing now?
Yeah.
Fire season. We used to have 4 seasons. Now we have 5. I'm still coming to grips with all of this. I'm going to be honest with you. I feel sad by that. I don't know exactly when fire season starts. I do think it's dependent. I think typically it's July and August.
Mm-hmm. Well, you're going to have a new evacuation plan and new plans. How are you going to update the city on that? When they're
You mean the residents of the city?
Yes, us. How are we going to find out about how to evacuate the city?
Well, that's a huge component, isn't it? I mean, it's not, all your plans make no sense if you guys don't know about it. It doesn't work. So we have to first formulate the plan with you. That's what this public meeting is about, this town hall. And then once the plan is formulated, we have to communicate it to you through every channel possible. Media, the city's website, put it in the utility billing information, Zoom meetings like this, where we get out early and often, social media. Certainly as your mayor, no one, I think, would know me to be a quiet person who doesn't like to communicate. So I'm going to be in front of it all day, every day. Really, we absolutely have to get buy-in, and everyone has to know about it. My goal would be so that almost like, when you go to stay at a hotel, they have the thing on the back of the door that has like the evacuation route in case of a problem. I want every resident of Ashland to have that on their door. Something that says, this is your route out. This is the plan. If you see smoke, this is what you do. Kind of a 1, 2, 3. So that it's very mapped out and very clear. And then we don't want to leave behind our unhoused residents either. So we need to find a way to get the message out through ORA and through our other partners, so that folks who are unhoused know where they can grab a bus and get out of town and be safe too.
How does the Wildfire Safety Commission play into this?
The Wildfire Safety Commission came out with a list of recommendations, many of which were excellent. And I think as we go about our evacuation plan and our planning in general, we need to take those recommendations into consideration. Many of them were around like using roads better. The road diet is an extreme concern to many people. Also, we have, they're suggesting using gravel and creating roads that are specifically for emergency evacuation plans. I thought they had some brilliant ideas, and we definitely need to go through that again and enact those ideas as a council.
Okay, I guess one more question. How are you going to secure funding to continue the thinning of the Ashland watershed, which is the Ashland Resiliency Plan, which we've gotten a lot of kudos for nationally?
Mm-hmm. Well, I actually think that's one of the few things that we don't really seem to have any trouble securing funds for.
Okay.
It's so well recognized. And in fact, a couple of years ago, I went back to DC and met with the Department of Agriculture, who helps run that program. And we had huge kudos even then during the former administration. I expect that to continue. Lomakatsi Restoration Project, which was a partner in the AFR, Ashland Forest Resiliency, it does not struggle to secure grant funding, and the city of Ashland has not struggled with that piece of funding either. And I don't really expect that to change. If anything, I expect that to get better. I do want us to be aggressive in the way that we thin our forests. That doesn't mean, just to be clear, tree hugger from birth does not mean going in and cutting down all the trees. What it does mean is creating healthy forests on normal and natural burn patterns. The Forest Service, and we know this now, deliberately did not follow those burn patterns that they were aware of for many, many years. Part of that reason was heavy pressure from the timber industry to not follow those burn patterns. And so we need to do that. We do need to, when trees are thinned, we need to leave them on the ground and let them decompose in a natural way, and allow for habitat restoration within the forest, because that habitat restoration makes a really big difference to how we sequester water and carbon. So really, really important that we continue to honor that project and keep going.
Okay. Well, let's move on to a big area is equity. So we had a traumatic experience as a community. A young Black man was killed, murdered here recently, but the council has taken some steps. You put forward a proposal to establish a racial and social equity commission, and that was presented at the, I think, the first city council meeting. And so what was the results of that discussion?
The result of that discussion was a unanimous vote to direct staff to create an ordinance around establishing a racial and social equity commission. So what does this commission do? Well, for one, it can't be performative. We can't just have a commission that's on the books and we say, oh yeah, look, we're cool, we have a commission. Certainly not going to do us any good. The commission has to have actual authority to examine with complete permission from staff to examine the way we do things. What are our hiring practices? What are our policing practices? How do we look at affordable housing in terms of where we locate it? All these things affect equity. We also have tasked this commission, and there's some controversy around it, I know, tasked this commission to look at all systems that contribute to oppression of people of color, queer people, and people who are on lower socioeconomic status. And so even though the city might not, for instance, let's throw out an example. Let's say that a person of color goes to the doctor and they feel that they are not getting the same amount of medical care or appropriate care as opposed to their friend who is a white-bodied person. So let's say that happens. Well, the city can't affect that directly, right? We're not in a position of directly going to a doctor's office or a clinic or a hospital and telling them that they have to do better. But as a result of the commission presenting those findings in open to the council could make a phone call and say, hey, this was presented, or the commission can turn around and make a phone call and say, we're with the Racial and Social Equity Commission, and we've had this concern brought to us, and we'd like to know how you're addressing it. So not everything has to be direct policy. Some things can be realms of influence. So I feel this is an important step moving in this direction. And then Councillor Graham and former colleagues, Councillor Slattery and Rosenthal, also wrote the equity resolution, which we are still looking at and abiding by. And I think those two things come together to complete that picture so that the commission and council as a whole can enact these goals together and create a community that is inherently more equitable, which I think we all want, don't we?
I would agree with you. So those two these are going to complement each other. So
That's correct.
yeah, so I listened to or watched the meeting on the 19th, and Councillor Graham gave she was at the end of the meeting, so it was very quick and consolidated, but she gave an update on some of the actions that the resolution, my understanding is that each of the councilors is assigned a role, and they then report back to the council, or perhaps to Tanya, I'm not sure. Anyway, she gave a very detailed report on that. But on the 19th, then also, I understood that the commission still needs to be put in the form of a resolution and voted on. What's the current status then on getting the commission in place?
Well, I could use your help on that, actually. It needs to be passed as an ordinance. Little bit of foot dragging going on there. So I would appreciate a letter writing campaign and let people know if you support that commission. I'd appreciate your help in letting administration know that you support it. There's just seems to be some disconnect around the goals and scope, but I can't brook a performative commission. The commission has to be able to make recommendations and let the council know how we are doing as a community as a whole. And we need to get on with it. So it's not in the look ahead. I'm concerned about that. We don't want this to be one of those good ideas that falls through the cracks or allow perfect to be the enemy of the good. We need to get started on this and seat those commissioners. So yeah, it's not going as fast as I want, if I'm honest.
Well, I think there's some concern that Ashland has too many commissions, that some of the commissions could be combined, that the councilors are assigned as a liaison to each of the commissions, and perhaps they don't know what their role is to ensure that that commission is being productive. So
Yeah, I mean, if I'm honest, that doesn't apply to this
Aaron,
commission.
is
It doesn't, sorry, go ahead.
I just said, is that a red herring that people are using?
In my view, do we have too many commissions? Yeah, probably. And should we look at maybe combining some of them? Sure, of course. Are we unclear on liaison role? Not really. There's the Ashland Municipal Code lays out what a council liaison is. I copied that and sent it to all the counselors so they would know what the role of a liaison. We already have a liaison in Gina Duquesne for this commission. And I think that she'll do a strong job. We already have a ton of really qualified applicants who want to be on the commission. So I'm not concerned about that. And as to staff time, I've put forward that we don't need to have it intensely staffed. I think that that's also one of those things that we think we need that we don't need. Tyomira and his police department have agreed to be staff liaisons, and I think that's a good idea. And I think that we can have a secretary among those on the commission who can take notes, and they can be broadcast on RVTV. I think those are red herrings. I think they tend to feel a bit like excuses to me, if I'm honest.
So will this be on the agenda for the first February meeting?
I'm trying to get it there.
Okay.
Pushing the rock up the old hill.
Okay. Well, we're pretty good at writing letters to the editor, AAUW. So maybe we can help you out there.
That'd be nice. Thank you.
There was also discussion about the city participating in a celebration of Juneteenth, which is Saturday the 19th this year. What are some things that the city might be doing in order to support that holiday that a lot of people really don't know about until recently?
Yeah, well, OSF, Oregon Shakespeare Festival, used to be the guys who organized Juneteenth, and I hope that they're going to be a part of it this year as well. I know that there's a committee, Councilor Paula Hyatt, Councilor Duquesne, and Councilor Seffinger. Those three are working on it and met recently about possibilities. And it's a celebration and it matters, and we should talk about it. Does it bring full equity into existence? Not really, but it's a step in the right direction. They are discussing purchasing flags and having them hang around the city, which would be really neat, along with the American flag, because Black Americans are Americans. There's just ongoing dialogue about the possibilities of, supporting it on city websites and literature and moving from there. And I don't know the full scope of the plans for Juneteenth yet, but I know it's in the planning process, and that's a good thing.
Well, before we move on, is there anything else you'd like to say about racial equity?
I'd like to say that I have been in conversations with Andrea, who is Aiden's mom. He leaves behind a younger brother and a younger sister. They are wanting to move to Ashland. They were in Klamath Falls. They're wanting to move here and continue the work to ensure equity in the future for the city of Ashland, and so that her two remaining children can be safe and accepted here in Ashland. And I couldn't support her more. I appreciate deeply what she's doing. And I just think it's at this point where I don't know that we can afford to have, 4 more years of conversation. I think that we are at the point where it's really got to be about action. And it's really hard as a white-bodied person, a white-appearing person, walking the streets and understanding what it's like for someone who has a completely different experience, right? When you don't experience it, sometimes you don't understand it. That's just life. That's what it is to live inside, the skin we're in. But I'm at the place of believing people If they tell me that's their experience, I believe them until proven otherwise. And Black, Indigenous, people of color have told us that this community is not equitable and that they don't feel safe. And that's good enough for me to really get started and roll up our sleeves and make this the community that I think all the good people on this Zoom call want to have, which is a fair and equitable community where people can be safe. And I'm going to say this, that also includes the unhoused. You know, it's not even implicit bias, the explicit bias against folks who don't have a place to live, people who are in dire poverty, is somewhat surprising to me, if I'm honest. I don't understand why there is so much explicit bias. I think there's this sense that in our culture, money equals morality. And I don't believe that's true. I think it's time to maybe re-examine the systems that cause that level of poverty. And if anyone wants to ask me a question later about that, I'd be happy to explore that further, because I really want to unpack that and figure out where that is coming from. And I think we need to cure that too.
Well, that's a good segue to our next subject matter, housing. And this problem's been around forever. I've lived here almost 20 years, and not so much in the first 10, but certainly in the last 10 years. So the unhoused in town have been protesting the ordinances that prevent them from sleeping on city property. And although we know this is not new, they have a new tagline for this. This may be a national housing now. So I've seen them, their signage, I've seen them camp on public property. And actually yesterday, or this would be Thursday in the tidings, there was a report that stated Ashland mayor throws support behind a housing initiative led by a local activist group. And there was a video where you stated that the most important thing is the will. And if we have the political will to solve these problems, we will solve them. And I think we do. And so what makes you think that we finally, after all these years, have the political will to address this very complex problem? It's not an easy one.
Well, I think that, and maybe I'm just dreaming, so I guess I'll find out. I think that we have the political will because there's a greater understanding of what causes homelessness as a result of the Alameda fire. You know, there were people here who were unhoused from the Paradise Fire. I don't know if you all know that, but there were a lot of folks who came this way. They started in Chico and got driven out of Chico. The Alameda Fire, 2,700 some residents were lost. You don't just absorb that easily or quickly. There were people who absolutely had homeowners insurance, and the insurance companies are giving them a hard time and they don't yet have their payments. There are people who have filed with FEMA and have denial after denial after denial. So these are working people who had homes and now don't have homes anymore. Many of these people have been put up in temporarily in hotels and motels, and those hotels and motel lodging chits expire at the end of January. So this starts to get quite dire quite fast. Many of those folks were already people who were living in low-income housing, you know, what I would consider workforce housing, you know, mobile home parks and RV parks. So there's not the option of just running out with their extra money and getting another place to live. So it's shown us, I think, that this can and does happen to everybody, regardless of who you are. I think the myth that most folks who are unhoused want to be unhoused has been, I hope the lid has been blown off that. Are there some people who are unhoused and state that they wish to prefer to stay unhoused? There are some, but when you really unpack it in the dialogue, which I've done in my research, and just a quick background as a journalist, I've been researching this subject for since the early 80s and have continued to follow these trends. And did work for All Care Health and their social determinants of health, interviewing thousands of people who are unhoused. When you unpack the statement that I want to stay unhoused, you start to realize that these are people, what they're really telling you is they don't want to work for $10 an hour and still live under a bridge when it comes right down to it. Nowhere in this country can a person working full-time in a minimum wage job, even here in Oregon, afford an apartment. So we got big issues. We have an economy that leaves millions of people behind. We have climate change refugees, and we don't have affordable housing. This is what causes homelessness. The number one cause of homelessness is poverty. It's not anything else. It's not, I hear people say, oh, it's drug addiction. Well, there are lots of drug addicted people who live in houses. What's the difference between an addict who's on the street and an addict that's in a house? Money. People say mental health causes people to be unhoused. I think that what happens is that people who are mentally ill sometimes find themselves in a situation where they can't afford a place to live because disability is, $900 a month. Try living on that. And then once you're unhoused and you don't get regular sleep, many of these people are awakened every 2 hours, so they don't get a full night's sleep. That adds to the trauma of mental health problems and makes that trauma worse. I don't know if you know this, but sorry, I'm spouting all my facts here. Most people, it costs more money to keep people unhoused than to house them. When you add in mental health treatment and medical treatment, people who are unhoused walk an average of 10 miles a day with 20 pounds on their back, in their backpacks. The foot problems alone are astronomical. Add to that the issues when you don't get a full night's sleep, and it becomes really dire. So yeah, I do support people in getting a full night's sleep. Does that mean that I think that we ought to have folks sleeping in Lithia Park? No. Do I think we ought to have people sleeping on the sidewalk? No. The plaza? No. Downtown? No. What I think we ought to do is have people sleeping in safe shelter. That's what I think.
Well, that brings up I think one of the demands of the protesters is a urban camping site. And I think they've mentioned Hargadine parking structure as a possibility. Is that viable? Does that seem like something that could happen?
A really short term, though.
Short term.
That's not going to be a full-time answer. I don't even know, 100% how healthy it is to be sleeping in a parking garage on the second layer. At least it's a roof. It has that. There's electricity. It has that. You could put up porta potties and trash service there, but it'd be very temporary because we are going to eventually have our plays again. We are eventually going to have people coming to visit us, and you can't have a homeless shelter in the parking structure. So I think it could be okay temporarily, but it's not a long-term answer by any stretch. I mean, we're talking a matter of months maybe there. Council talked about this in our last meeting about an urban campground similar to the one that is being run in Medford. There's one in Grants Pass. Cities all around us are doing this. Eugene has done it for years and years. Portland has done it for years and years. They're getting better because of these pallet shelters, to be honest. It's a much more humane way to do things than putting people in tents that leak and things smell funky. I've spent much amount of time in these campgrounds, and they can be kind of nasty. So I think these pallet houses are a much better answer. And pallet houses are 4 walls and a door that locks, and they have heat and air conditioning and lights and a built-in bunk, and you can put them up in an hour. They're pretty inexpensive. And I think they offer a much better solution, and they're more aesthetically pleasing so that if you were to drive by, it looks better. So to me, I want to do it right. I want to identify the right piece of land. I'd like Rogue Retreat to administer it because they're the local people who know how to do that. And I have faith in them in doing that because they've done a good job in the past. I'd like to see pallet houses. I'd like to see regular trash service. I'd like to see, in my world, we would have a better system than those nasty little onesie porta potties that don't get dumped often enough. I can't imagine that that's good for public health. I'd like to see something a little more upscale than that. Shower trailers coming there, and having the possibility of a privacy fence so that when you're driving by, you don't just constantly stare in at people living their lives. So these are the things that I'm interested in seeing, and council is moving the ball forward. We have a grant out right now to the state requesting $300,000 to do this. And then we have to cite it appropriately, because that really matters where people are cited. We don't want folks downtown. We don't want folks necessarily in residential neighborhoods, and typically urban campgrounds are not in those places. So it's a process. It's too long for me, but at least we're starting it.
Okay, let's see. Well, this is not really for the unhoused, but there was some discussion that the Planning Commission is looking at the possibility, since we have a lot of retail locations that are vacant, that they could change some zoning laws so that people could actually, we could have residential on those first floors of the mixed use facilities or buildings. What's your thinking about that?
I think it's a great idea. I think that there were two houses right near the old Ashland Armory who used to house college students. They were broken up into these studio apartments, and then they got bought and gentrified, and they've been turned into offices. And in the 3 years that I've been walking by them, they've never been occupied. So that's a waste of space. I think that as the pandemic grinds on, and as people learn other ways of working in offices, I think some of these offices are not going to be occupied even when it's over. So I think allowing these to become residential for the short term, and in my view, we should consider it long term, is a great idea. We talked about it. I think there's great support among counselors to do this. And I have to give a shout out to KDA Homes and Laz Ayala, who brought this, and Mark Knox, who brought this idea forward. And I think it has legs and will happen.
Good. It sounds like a
Regina, this is Paul. I just want to make sure you've got your time checked. 10 minutes.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Okay, one last question here on city property. I understand we have a service contract with who I don't know, but I think it's been awarded for a proposal for fixing the community center and Pioneer Hall. So I'd like to hear from you on that. And then also, what's the plan for City Hall?
Well, for City Hall, there isn't a plan at the present time. I think that that's something that will be revisited down the road, but I didn't feel the urgency that some others felt around that. I still don't. It's in no danger of crumbling in the moment. I think that, there are folks who feel that, the offices aren't good enough. It's just not my number one priority. I think that community center, though, and Pioneer Hall are big deals, and they need to just get done. And the budget has been wonky, council set aside $500,000, and then it got whittled down to $300,000 while we did another study of City Hall that the voters didn't pass anyway. This is like, you're going to hear a lot of frustration coming out of me around this. Then I heard the estimate that it's $500,000 per, well, first it was, over $1 million to fix the community center in Pioneer Hall. And I'm like, you've got to be kidding me. The community center is a basic building. You could mow it down and start over for less than that. So I'm very frustrated at the length of time that it's taken, and I'm very frustrated at the numbers that I've seen in front of me. And now we're hiring yet another consultant to look at this again, an architectural firm. And to me, I don't know why we do it that way. And I'd love to see it change, because I feel as if one of the ways that you and I, if we want to do a home remodel, we contact 5 contractors and we have them do a walkthrough, and they give us an estimate, and then we hold them to that estimate as we go down the road with, perhaps some wiggle room. And that is your consultant, right? You look at all the different bids and you decide, and some of those if you're doing a major remodel, involve architects. I think the city could do the same thing, and I'm really frustrated and want that to get moving. I really would love for those to be open when this pandemic lifts, so we can all come together and enjoy each other's company and get back to our tango lessons at the community center. For heaven's sakes, I was only 2 in before it closed, and I want to go back. So I'm with you. I'm very motivated to get that done. And many of us on council are similarly motivated. So we're going to keep pushing.
Okay, good, good. Well, those are all the questions that I had prepared. And I don't see any questions in the chat. So I'm going to leave the last two questions about vision. So I guess I do have one more question. What do you see as the #1 challenge as our new mayor?
Affordable housing. And I'm going to tell you why. Because everything depends on it. I have talked extensively with business owners who pay living wages, and they tell me it's really hard to imagine expanding in this community, which they could. And I'm going to bring up Blue Marble again. Great company, living wage employer, owned by 2 local brothers. It couldn't be more perfect, making environmentally friendly and sensitive toys to teach kids about taking better care of our Mother Earth. And they'd love to expand. There's 2 problems. One, they can't seem to get a location to expand because we've yet to take care of our surplus property. They'd like to buy the B Street yard. It isn't cleaned out yet. So could we get on that sometime soon? And the second thing is affordable housing here in Ashland. And many employers tell me even the ones who are here can't imagine expanding. And the people that I've talked to about coming here struggle with the idea of bringing families here because there's no place for them to live. So what I'm saying is everything kind of hinges on this for our community to thrive and have young people who are able to stay here. People, when they graduate Southern Oregon University, and I used to teach there, and I would see these bright young people leaving our community because they couldn't afford to stay. So affordable housing, affordable housing, affordable housing. I think so much depends on that. We really need to get going.
Great answer. Last question. What excites you the most about your new job?
What excites me the most is this. Groups of concerned, intelligent people collaborating on better solutions going forward. People who are like-minded and want our community to thrive in years to come, and all of us coming together for the best possible answers to fix what ails us. That's really the thing of being mayor. I'm only going to do this for 4 years. It's a one-term thing. And I believe in that because it makes you bold. If you're trying to stay for 12 years, you want to make everybody happy, and you're being real careful, and you're taking slow and steady steps so that you can get reelected. I'm not about that. 4 years in and out, get as much done as I can with your guidance, with your input, with total transparency. That's my bugaboo. Everything we do needs to involve you, and you need to know about it. I'm very excited about that. I want to get done what we can get done in 4 years. And then I want to leave the seat warm for the next person, Mayor Duquesne. No, sorry. For the next person, whoever that's going to be, to continue the good work. And that excites me. It really does. And I'm available. I'm on the phone. I'm on Zoom calls. I'm on my email all the time doing this work because I love it.
Well, that is a great way to close our meeting. And I want to thank you so much for joining us today.
Regina?
Yes?
Excuse me, I just want to let you know chat is disabled. So if you expected people to put in questions, they can't.
Okay, yeah, I see mine's disabled too. But we've run out of time. And so thank you so much, Julie. And hopefully we can have you back after you've been on the job for a while and hear from you again. So thanks for joining us today at the AAUW branch meeting. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Appreciate the opportunity. Hope I can come back.
Great.
Hi, this is Paul. I just want to add my thanks. Sorry about the chat. I'm not sure how that happened, but Regina used all the time with her questions anyway. I just wanted to invite everybody to our February meeting, let you know it's on the 27th. We have a panel of distinguished SOU representatives talking about diversity, inclusion, and Title IX at SOU. So that should be another great meeting. And thank you all so much for coming. It was a great session. I learned a lot, and I am going to end the meeting now. Thanks again.
Thank you.